The night in the small desert town had always been quiet. People were used to the soft wind rushing against the sand, the distant call of a bird, or the occasional sound of someone driving home late. But for the past few evenings, something strange had been happening. There were sounds that didn't belong to the desert. Soft cries, almost like babies calling out. At first, nobody paid much attention. People assumed it was just some animal from the nearby dunes, maybe a creature looking for its mother. But the cries kept coming, softer some nights, louder on others. Eventually, the sound became something people whispered about at tea stalls and outside shops. Still, no one tried to find out what it really was. One early morning, long before sunrise, a lone traveler was walking across the rocky path near the old canyon. This traveler had a habit of going out alone, especially when the world was still half asleep. The air was cooler, the silence cleaner, and thoughts clearer. That morning, the traveler heard the strange crying again. But this time, it was closer, louder, and filled with something that felt almost like pain or fear. The traveler stopped and listened again, trying to figure out the direction from where the sound was coming. It echoed slightly, bouncing off the canyon walls, making it hard to pinpoint. But there was no mistake, the cry was real, and it sounded like something needed help. Curiosity pushed the traveler forward. The path into the canyon was narrow, filled with loose stones that made the traveler step carefully. The deeper they went, the more the sound grew, but something else appeared too. Strange marks on the rocks, thin glowing scratches that shimmered faintly even in the dark. The traveler touched one of the scratches and felt a slight warmth. It was unlike anything natural. The marks looked like something had scraped across the canyon walls with force, but no creature of the desert could leave marks that glowed like that. But the traveler's heart began to beat a little faster, not out of fear, but from the feeling that something extraordinary was waiting ahead. The cries became clearer now, 3 or 4 tiny voices calling out, mixed with a much deeper, weaker sound, almost like a large creature struggling to breathe. The traveler moved slowly, not wanting to get too close too fast. Finally, as the canyon opened into a wider area, the traveler stopped suddenly. There, hidden between 2 massive boulders, was a sight that seemed impossible. A giant creature, something that looked like a dragon from old stories, lay curled up on the ground. But it was unlike any dragon a human imagination could create. Its scales were smooth and shining slightly under the early morning sky, but not like metal, more like living stone. Its wings, folded tightly against its body, had long glowing lines running through them, like veins carrying light instead of blood. The creature was clearly injured. One wing bent oddly, and the side of its body looked bruised with strange dark patches. It wasn't moving much, only struggling to breathe in slow, heavy intervals. And right next to it were 3 tiny Hatchlings. The traveler stared in disbelief. The hatchlings were each the size of a house cat, with soft glowing eyes and little bodies covered in faintly shimmering scales. They were nudging the large creature, chirping softly, almost like they were begging it to wake up or respond. But the big creature could barely lift its head. The hatchlings cried again, their sounds echoing in the quiet canyon. The traveler felt something shift inside. There was no fear, only an unexpected sense of sympathy. This huge thing, which should have been frightening, looked more helpless than dangerous in that moment. The hatchlings weren't aggressive. They didn't even notice the traveler at first. Their attention was entirely on their injured parent. The traveler didn't move for a moment, unsure of what to do. Running did not seem right. No one else was there. If the creature had crashed or landed here somehow, it must have been suffering for days. And the babies? They had probably been trying to help. But what could they do? Slowly, the traveler took a step closer. The sound of the foot against the ground made the biggest hatchling turn its head. It didn't growl or attack. It simply stared with wide, glowing eyes, filled with a confused mix of fear and hope. The traveler raised both hands slightly to show they meant no harm. The hatchling watched, then let out a small cry as if calling for the bigger creature's attention. But the parent didn't move. The traveler noticed the sand near the large creature was dry and cracked. Maybe it hadn't had water for days. Maybe that was why it was so weak. The thought made the traveler walk back a little, toward a small stream that ran between two canyon stones. The traveler filled a bottle with water and returned cautiously. The hatchlings watched closely this time, but did not try to stop the traveler. Slowly, the traveler placed the bottle near the big creature's mouth. Nothing happened. The creature didn't move. The traveler felt a little helpless. But then something unexpected happened. The smallest hatchling nudged the bottle gently, trying to push it closer to its parent. The sight touched the traveler deeply. These small creatures were trying everything they could to save their parent. The traveler sat down a little distance away, trying to think. Reporting the creature to authorities would cause panic. The town would misunderstand. They might try to harm it out of fear. And the creature was not hurting anyone. It was only trying to survive. So the traveler decided to keep this discovery quiet, at least until they understood more. The rising sun began to shine into the canyon, making the glowing lines on the creature's wings brighter. The traveler noticed the strange scratches on the rocks more clearly now. They weren't random marks. They looked like something large had scraped along the canyon walls while falling or dragging itself. Maybe the creature had crashed. Maybe it had been flying and lost control. Or perhaps it came from somewhere beyond the sky. The traveler didn't know, but the idea felt both terrifying and incredible at the same time. As the morning grew warmer, the hatchlings grew restless again. They walked around their parent, making soft noises and tapping the ground with their tiny claws. One of them even nudged the traveler's shoe gently, as if asking for help. The traveler didn't move quickly, afraid of scaring them. Instead, they sat still and let the hatchling examine them. After a moment, the little creature moved away, satisfied that the traveler meant no harm. The traveler now understood one thing clearly. The parent dragon wasn't just injured, it was declining fast. The hatchlings were desperate. And somehow, for reasons the traveler couldn't explain, these small creatures trusted them enough to not attack or hide. The sun climbed higher, and the traveler stayed with them, watching and thinking, trying to find clues about what might help. Sparks of light occasionally flickered from the creature's body, not violently, but softly, like a signal weakening. The traveler began to realize this wasn't just an animal. It was something far more intelligent and emotional. Whatever had brought it here, whatever had injured it, the family was now stranded, alone, and unnoticed by the world. The traveler took a deep breath, understanding the weight of the moment. They had found something that could change their entire life. But right now, none of that mattered. There were 3 helpless hatchlings and an injured parent fighting for life. And the traveler was the only human who knew about them. The cries continued, a sound filled with fear, need, and hope. And in that quiet canyon, the traveler made an unspoken promise to stay, at least for now. Because some moments in life are not about fear or mystery. They are about doing what feels right. And helping a helpless creature, no matter where it came from, felt like the only right thing to do. The traveler stayed near the strange creature and its hatchlings, unsure what to do next. The morning sun had warmed the canyon, but the air still felt heavy with worry. The little hatchlings circled their parent again and again, letting out soft cries. They were not loud anymore, but they were constant, filled with a kind of sadness the traveler could feel even without understanding their language. The traveler moved closer, trying to observe the creature more carefully without getting too close. The large dragon-like being lay almost completely still, its breathing shallow, its body shifting only when the hatchlings nudged it. The bruises across its side had darkened, and some of the glowing lines in its wings had dimmed. Whatever had hurt this creature had happened days ago, maybe even longer. It hadn't just gotten injured, it had been suffering without help. The traveler wondered how long the hatchlings had been crying like this, calling for someone, anyone, to help them. Maybe that was why the town had been hearing those strange sounds. The cries weren't meant to scare anyone. They were just desperate calls from little ones who didn't know what else to do. The traveler knelt near a rock, watching quietly. The hatchlings kept trying to push their parent gently, maybe hoping the creature would get up or drink the water the traveler had brought earlier. But it didn't move. Only a small breath came and went, weaker each time. The traveler looked up at the canyon walls again. The glowing scratches felt more noticeable now. They formed trails as if the creature had collided with the rock, slid downward, and finally collapsed where it now lay. That meant it must have come from above. Maybe it was flying. Maybe it wasn't from this world at all. The thought made the traveler's stomach twist with uncertainty, but curiosity kept growing still. The most pressing question was simple. How could they help? The traveler touched the sand near the big creature. It was dry and warm. The creature might need water. The traveler stood and walked to the stream again. Using a bigger container this time, the traveler filled it with as much water as they could carry. When they returned, the hatchlings noticed immediately. They stepped aside, watching with eyes that glowed like tiny lamps in the shade. The traveler poured water slowly near the creature's mouth, hoping it would drink even a little. But again, there was no reaction. The traveler sighed, feeling helpless. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the hatchlings reached out with its small snout and gently touched the water. It dipped its mouth into it, then turned to the traveler and made a small, hopeful chirp. The sound wasn't just a noise. It felt like the hatchling was trying to communicate something, maybe gratitude, or maybe asking for more help. The traveler's heart softened. These little creatures were intelligent. They understood kindness. The traveler poured more water, making sure the hatchlings could drink. One by one, they stepped forward and sipped the water timidly, watching the traveler with careful, trusting eyes. It was clear they had been without proper care for a long time. After the hatchlings drank, they returned to their parent and nudged its face again, trying to share the water in their own small way. One hatchling even tried to push a little puddle toward the creature with its tiny claws. The traveler's chest tightened with emotion at the sight. These babies were trying everything they could to save their parent, even if they didn't know how. Hours passed slowly. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting bright light over the canyon. The traveler stayed close, sometimes sitting on a rock, sometimes walking around looking for clues that might help. The hatchlings followed the traveler from a distance, almost like little shadows. They seemed to understand the traveler wasn't a threat. At one point, the traveler noticed something unusual on the creature's side. A part of its skin wasn't just bruised. It looked like some energy had burned through it. A strange dark patch surrounded by a faint blue glow. The traveler didn't touch it, afraid it might hurt the creature more, but they leaned closer to examine it. The wound didn't look like anything caused by nature. It looked unnatural, like something powerful had struck it. The traveler stepped back, trying to process this. If something had hurt the creature, what could it have been? And were there more creatures like this out there? The thought was overwhelming, but the traveler pushed it aside. Right now, the focus had to be on helping the hurt being in front of them. The hatchlings walked to the traveler again, making soft, repeated chirps. The traveler couldn't understand the sounds, but guessed the babies wanted the traveler to help the parent drink. The traveler hesitated, then gently lifted the creature's head a little, just enough to tilt it. The big creature let out a faint, shallow breath, its body twitching slightly. The travelers steadied themselves and slowly brought the water closer. For a moment, it seemed like nothing would happen. Then, just barely, the creature's mouth opened. Not wide, not strong, but enough to let a tiny amount of water in. The hatchlings made happy chirping sounds, circling around excitedly. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small sign of life. The travelers spent the next hour trying to carefully give the creature more water. Every few minutes, the creature would take a tiny bit, then stop. The traveler didn't try to force it, but each small sip felt like progress. The hatchlings stayed close, nudging their parent and looking up at the traveler with hope. While all this was happening, the traveler kept thinking about what to do next. The town wouldn't believe this. They might panic, or worse, try to harm the creature. The traveler didn't want that. But the traveler also knew they couldn't handle this alone forever. Still, something inside insisted that involving people right now was the wrong move. The traveler stood up and walked around the canyon again, searching for anything helpful. After a while, they noticed small, faint marks in the sand. Not scratches this time, but tiny footprints. They didn't belong to the hatchlings. They were too long, too narrow. Maybe the parent had walked a little before collapsing completely. The traveler followed the faint tracks a short distance until they disappeared near a pile of rocks, behind the rocks. The traveler found something surprising, a strange piece of material, smooth, light, and cold to the touch. It didn't look like metal, but it didn't look natural either. The traveler picked it up carefully. It had faint lines glowing across its surface, like the creature's wings. Maybe it was part of something the creature had come with. Maybe it was broken off from something larger. The traveler looked back toward the creature, wondering if this piece mattered or if it could help somehow. The hatchlings watched curiously as the traveler returned. They didn't show fear, only curiosity. The traveler placed the strange fragment down near the creature. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the fragment gave off a soft glow, just for a second. Like a heartbeat of light. The traveler felt a tiny spark of hope. The hatchlings stepped closer, sniffing the fragment before turning back to the traveler. Chirping softly again, the traveler spent the rest of the day trying small things, bringing more water, finding shade by moving a few rocks, clearing sharp stones away from the creature's side, comforting the hatchlings by staying close. Every little action wasn't much by itself, but together it made the traveler feel they were gradually helping as evening approached. The cries of the hatchlings became softer, as if they were finally less panicked. Maybe they sensed something changing. Maybe they felt the traveler's care. The big creature still looked weak, but its breathing seemed a little steadier than before. Not healed, but not getting worse. The traveler sat down beside the canyon wall, tired but determined. The hatchlings decided to curl up nearby, their glowing eyes blinking slowly as they finally began to rest. The traveler knew there was a long way to go. The creature needed real healing, something beyond simple water or shelter. But for now, at least the little ones weren't crying as desperately as before. The canyon was quiet again, but not in a lonely way. It felt like a place where hope was trying to grow, slowly and carefully. And the traveler understood one thing more clearly now helping. This creature wasn't just an accident or a moment of curiosity. It was becoming something deeper, something that felt like a responsibility, something the traveler couldn't walk away from. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, the traveler stayed beside the strange creature and its hatchlings, ready for whatever would come next. The night in the canyon felt different from the usual quiet desert nights. The traveler had stayed awake longer than expected, watching the injured creature breathe slowly while the tiny hatchlings slept close to its side. The stars above seemed brighter in the open sky, and the cool air wrapped around everything like a thin blanket. Even in silence, the place felt alive, as if something unseen was moving beneath the surface. The traveler shifted a little, stretching stiff legs. It had been a long day, and exhaustion was settling in. Still, leaving the canyon wasn't an option. Something inside told the traveler to stay. Maybe it was the hatchlings, or the faint signs of improvement in the big creature's breathing. Or maybe it was simply the feeling that something important was happening, something that didn't happen in an ordinary life. As the traveler watched, the glow on the creature's wings began to flicker slightly. At first, the traveler thought it was the moonlight playing tricks on their eyes. But then the glow deepened, spreading slowly across its entire body. The traveler leaned forward, unsure if this was a good sign or something dangerous. But the hatchlings didn't seem scared. They woke up and approached their parent, chirping softly as if trying to comfort it. The light growing from the creature's body was gentle, not harsh. It reminded the traveler of warm lamps in old houses, steady, comforting, alive. The light formed a soft aura around the hatchlings, almost like a protective shell. The traveler felt a warm breeze sweep over the canyon floor, even though no wind was blowing. It felt like the creature was gathering some kind of energy deep within itself. And the ground beneath the traveler trembled, not violently, not enough to knock anything over. Just a soft, strange vibration that made the sand shift slightly. The traveler placed a hand on the ground to steady themselves and felt the vibration continue, rhythmic and steady. It was almost like a heartbeat, but too large, too powerful to belong to any normal creature. The traveler looked toward the injured being again. The light surrounding it was now pulsing gently, rising and falling. The hatchlings chirped loudly and stepped back a little, confused but not afraid. The traveler felt goosebumps rise along their arms, not from fear, but from the sense that something extraordinary was happening, something far beyond human understanding. Suddenly, a faint humming sound filled the air. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to echo inside the traveler's chest, almost like a deep musical note. The creature wasn't moving, but the sound felt like it was coming from it. The traveler's breathing slowed as they tried to make sense of what was happening. Then the hatchlings made a sound the traveler hadn't heard before, a high, vibrating chirp that echoed between the canyon walls. As soon as they did, small glowing symbols began to appear on the ground, starting from beneath the creature and spreading outward in thin lines of soft blue light. The traveler gasped quietly. The symbols looked like drawings or markings, but not like anything from human languages. They were curved, flowing, almost alive. Some looked like small spirals, others like long, gentle waves. They spread in patterns across the sand, stopping right before the traveler's feet. The traveler reached out slowly, touching one of the glowing marks. It felt warm, not burning, but like gentle sunlight on skin. The glow brightened for a moment in response to the touch, then dimmed again. The traveler pulled their hand back, heart racing with both fear and excitement. The hatchlings gathered around the traveler, chirping again, then turning their heads toward the canyon wall as if trying to lead them somewhere. The traveler looked in that direction and noticed something unusual, another glow, coming from a corner of the canyon. The traveler hadn't explored yet. The hatchlings walked ahead, stopping every few steps to make sure the traveler was following. Their little feet left tiny glowing prints for a moment before fading away. The traveler followed them, cautious but curious, as they approached the glowing area. The traveler realized it wasn't just a reflection or trick of light. It was a narrow opening, an entrance to a hidden cave. The glow inside wasn't harsh or frightening. It looked soft and peaceful, like warm lanterns glowing behind a curtain. The traveler hesitated at the entrance. The cave looked deep, and the light inside pulsed slowly, the same way the creature's body had moments ago. The hatchlings, however, seemed confident. They ran to the entrance and waited. Looking back at the traveler, expectantly, taking a breath, the traveler stepped inside. The cave wasn't very big at first. The ceiling was low, and the walls were covered in a smooth texture that didn't feel like ordinary rock. Instead, it felt almost polished. The light came from clusters of crystals growing from the walls and floor. They were long, thin, and glowing softly with a color somewhere between blue and green dot. The traveler approached the closest cluster and gently touched one of the crystals. It pulsed with warmth immediately, glowing brighter under the traveler's fingers. The hatchlings chirped excitedly, as if they understood something important. The crystals felt alive, or at least connected to something alive. Whatever they were, they held energy, gentle, warm, healing energy. The traveler picked up a small crystal that had broken naturally from its cluster. It felt light but strong, almost weightless in the traveler's hands. The hatchlings ran around, gathering near the traveler's feet, urging them to take more. But the traveler didn't want to disturb too much of the cave, so they took just a few glowing pieces and headed back toward the injured creature Dot as they stepped out of the cave. The traveler noticed the symbols on the ground had dimmed, but were still faintly visible. The big creature's light had softened again, but its breathing seemed slightly stronger. As if the glowing event had been a way of asking for help, the traveler placed the crystals gently near the creature's side, unsure what would happen. At first, nothing changed. But then, slowly, the crystals began glowing brighter, brighter than they had in the cave. They pulsed in time with the creature's breathing, almost as if communicating or transferring something. The hatchlings surrounded the crystals, chirping softly and tapping them with their tiny snouts. The light grew warm enough that the traveler could feel it on their skin. It wasn't dangerous. It was comforting, almost healing, and the crystals sent small streams of light toward the creature's wounds. The traveler stepped back, stunned. The light wasn't intense or frightening. It glided gently across the creature's body, gathering around the injured areas. The creature let out a faint sound, not a cry, but a soft, deep tone that vibrated through the ground. Dot. The traveler watched as the bruises slowly shifted, the dark patches softening in color. The glow around the creature became steadier, not as faint or unstable as before. It was as if the creature finally had the energy it needed to begin healing. The hatchlings chirped happily and curled up near their parent. Clearly feeling more hopeful. Dot. The traveler sat down again, overwhelmed. They had come into the canyon expecting nothing, and yet they had found a creature unlike anything on Earth. Seen symbols appear from nowhere, felt the ground hum, and found crystals that reacted to life itself. Nothing about this experience felt fake or imagined. Every moment felt real, too real to deny. The traveler looked at the hatchlings, then at the creature, then at the glowing crystals. Whatever this being was, it wasn't just some strange animal. It was something intelligent, something connected to a world or place beyond anything humans knew. The traveler didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. This moment wasn't meant for fear. It was meant for connection. The night deepened, stars reflecting on the canyon floor. The hatchlings finally settled down beside their healing parent. The traveler wrapped their arms around their knees and watched quietly, feeling the weight of the moment settle gently in their heart. Something unreal had happened, something impossible to explain in simple words. But the traveler knew it. Wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something even more extraordinary that was yet to come. The next morning came slowly, as if the sun itself was being careful not to disturb the fragile peace inside the canyon. The traveler had barely slept. Every time the creature took a deeper breath or the hatchlings made a small movement, the traveler opened their eyes again. It wasn't fear keeping them awake anymore. It was responsibility. Something inside kept saying that leaving this place, even for a moment, would feel wrong. When the light finally spread across the sky, the traveler rubbed tired eyes and sat up. For a few seconds, they didn't understand what had changed. Then they noticed the crystals. They weren't glowing the way they had during the night. Instead, they pulsed slowly, as if resting after working all night. The creature looked a little stronger. Not healed, not ready to move, but its breathing was deeper, more steady, less desperate. The traveler exhaled with relief. The hatchlings woke up too, stretching their tiny wings and shaking off the sand. Their eyes were brighter today, full of energy. The smallest one even hopped around the traveler's feet, like it was trying to say good morning. The traveler smiled softly and reached out a hand. The hatchling nudged the fingers gently before hurrying back to its siblings. The traveler stood up, looking around the canyon. The glowing symbols on the ground had almost disappeared, leaving only faint outlines. The cave entrance still shone softly, but nothing strange was happening now. The canyon looked peaceful, almost normal, like the previous night had been a dream. But at WASN single quotes T, the traveler moved closer to the creature and noticed that the bruises had changed color. They weren't dark and angry looking anymore. Instead, they were lighter, as if the healing process had begun properly. The wound on its side didn't glow as much now, but something like a thin, gentle shimmer covered it, almost like a natural bandage. The traveler had no idea how any of this worked. They didn't understand the creature's body, or the crystals, or the glowing energy that had filled the canyon. But they did know one thing. The crystals had helped. Maybe the cave held more answers. The hatchlings seemed unusually active that morning. They kept running toward the cave, chirping, then running back to the traveler. It was as if they were urging the traveler to go inside again. The traveler hesitated. The big creature was still weak, but it wasn't alone. The hatchlings were alert. Nothing dangerous seemed to be happening. The traveler walked toward the cave slowly, and the hatchlings followed closely behind. Inside, the crystals seemed brighter in the morning light. Some glowed like soft lanterns. Others shimmered faintly like reflections on water. The air inside felt warmer today, as if the cave itself was responding to what had happened the night before. The traveler walked deeper, guided by instinct more than anything else. At the back of the cave, something new caught their attention. A larger crystal formation stood on a stone pedestal-like shape, glowing much brighter than the rest. It wasn't just light, it looked like energy moving inside it, swirling slowly like calm water. The travelers stared at it, unsure whether they should touch it. But the hatchlings had no hesitation. They walked right up to it and chirped softly, almost respectfully, as if they knew what it was. The traveler knelt down, examining the crystal carefully. It looked ancient, not artificial, but also not entirely natural. It felt like something created with purpose. The traveler lightly touched its surface. A wave of warmth moved through their hand, traveling up their arm, not painful, but surprising. It felt like the crystal recognized the touch. The warmth faded quickly, but the traveler felt calmer, more focused. Then the hatchlings turned around and looked toward the canyon again, chirping urgently. The traveler stood, holding the crystal gently, and followed them out. When they stepped back into the sunlight, the traveler noticed something immediately. The injured creature had opened its eyes, not fully, not strongly, but enough to reveal a pair of deep, glowing eyes filled with intelligence, emotion, and exhaustion. The hatchlings ran toward their parent, chirping in excitement, rubbing their tiny heads against its face. The creature tried to lift its head, but could only manage a slight movement. The traveler approached slowly. Unsure how the creature would react now that it was awake. The creature's eyes shifted toward the traveler, not with fear or hostility, but with recognition, almost as if it remembered the help given the day before. The traveler froze, not wanting to make any sudden moves. The creature blinked slowly, a gesture that felt almost like a peaceful greeting. The traveler moved a little closer and placed the crystal gently beside the creature. The crystal glowed brighter immediately, responding to the creature's presence. The creature let out a soft, low sound, deep, almost musical. It wasn't a cry. It was a sound that carried gratitude. The traveler's heart warmed. They hadn't expected any kind of acknowledgement from the creature. They had helped simply because it was the right thing to do. But receiving that soft sound of gratitude felt like a moment the traveler would never forget. The hatchlings chirped excitedly, circling the crystal and their parent. For the first time since the traveler had found them, the hatchlings looked truly relieved, their previous fear replaced with joy. The traveler sat on a nearby rock and took a deep breath. Everything felt surreal, yet strangely familiar. Helping was something humans did. They helped animals, helped neighbors, helped strangers. Helping wasn't strange. What was strange was that the traveler wasn't helping a human or an animal from Earth. They were helping something that didn't belong to this world. Something extraordinary. As the day passed, the traveler continued to gather fresh water, clean the area, and keep watch. They even tried offering small fruits from the stream, though the creature didn't eat any. The hatchlings smelled the fruits curiously, but didn't touch them either. Maybe their food was something else entirely. Around midday, the traveler heard a distant sound coming from the top of the canyon. Not a cry or a roar, but something like a soft rumble. The traveler looked up sharply, trying to figure out what it was. The hatchlings paused too, ears perked. The injured creature's eyes widened slightly, as if recognizing the sound immediately. The traveler's heart began to beat faster. Was something coming? Something dangerous? Or something connected to the creature? The sound grew louder, then faded suddenly. Everything went silent again. The traveler looked at the creature, wondering if it knew what the sound meant. The creature blinked slowly and let out a faint rumble, quiet, almost sad. It felt like the creature wanted to explain something, but couldn't. It was too weak. As evening approached, the canyon grew cooler. The traveler sat near the creature again, watching the light from the crystals flicker gently. Then something unexpected happened. The creature lifted its wings slightly, just a little, but enough to reveal something underneath. The traveler leaned forward carefully and noticed a small metallic object hidden between the creature's folded skin. It wasn't a weapon. It looked more like a device. The creature looked at the traveler, its eyes filled with a mixture of urgency and trust. The traveler reached out slowly. The creature didn't pull away. Instead, it tilted its wing a little more, granting permission. The traveler took the device gently. It was light and warm. Strange symbols glowed on its surface, symbols similar to the ones that had appeared on the ground the previous night. The device hummed softly, almost like a heartbeat. The traveler realized something. This wasn't just a creature. It was part of something bigger, something intelligent, something advanced, something the traveler couldn't fully understand yet. The hatchlings chirped loudly again. Sensing something important happening, the traveler looked from the device to the creature, and then to the glowing cave. Something was about to change, and the traveler could feel it deep inside. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Something the traveler was now a part of, whether they understood it or not. The traveler barely slept that night. Even after everything they had seen, their mind kept replaying the same images over and over, the glowing symbols on the ground, the way the dragon had slowly healed, the soft sounds of the hatchlings resting beside their parent, and the feeling that something big was coming. The canyon was quiet in the early morning, more peaceful than it had been in days. For a moment, it felt like nothing strange had ever happened there. But the traveler knew better. Something unreal had begun the moment they stepped into that hidden place. And now it felt like the story was reaching a point of no return. The traveler walked toward the creature slowly, not wanting to disturb anything. The air around the dragon was different now. It didn't feel heavy or tense anymore. Instead, it felt warm, like standing near a gentle fire on a cold day. The dragon was awake, breathing calmly. The hatchlings were curled up close to it, making soft chirping sounds that felt almost like happy whispers. For the first time, the place didn't feel frightening. It felt like a family home, hidden far away from the noise of the world. The traveler sat down a short distance away, watching quietly. It felt strange how close they had become to these beings. Just a couple of days earlier, the traveler would have never believed something like this could even exist, let alone lie injured in a canyon. But now the creature didn't feel like some strange alien thing. It felt like a parent, tired, loving, protective, trying its best to stay strong for its young ones. As the sun slowly rose and painted the canyon walls gold, the traveler felt a light vibration under their feet. It wasn't strong enough to knock anything over, but it was steady, growing slowly. The traveler thought it might be the wind, or maybe the rocks shifting. But then the dragon lifted its head, and its eyes brightened with a soft glow. The vibration grew a little stronger, then steadier, almost like the ground itself was waking up. The traveler stood quickly, unsure of what was happening. The hatchlings stirred too, pressing closer to their parent. The dragon didn't look scared, though. It looked focused, as if it knew exactly what this was. The traveler waited, heart pounding, but trying to trust the moment. Then a faint hum filled the air. It sounded like a mix of wind, electricity, and distant singing all at once. It wasn't loud, but it was everywhere around the rocks, in the air, and even under the traveler's shoes. The dragon slowly rose to its feet, shaky at first, but growing stronger by the second. The hatchlings followed, standing on their tiny legs, blinking in the glowing light. The traveler took a step back, not out of fear, but to give the creature space. They felt the air shift again as rays of light, thin, straight beams began rising from the canyon floor. They weren't bright enough to hurt the eyes, but they shone with a soft, silver-blue glow. The beams formed a circle around the dragon and its hatchlings, outlining the place where the creature had been resting. The traveler realized this wasn't an attack, nor was it something dangerous. This was something planned, something the dragon had been waiting for. Whatever had brought them to this world was now calling them back. The dragon turned its head toward the traveler, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. There were no words, no sounds, just a deep, quiet understanding. The traveler felt something warm spread through their chest, almost like a silent goodbye. The creature blinked slowly, as if trying to say thank you one more time. Then the beams of light around the canyon grew brighter, lifting dust from the ground like tiny floating stars. The hatchlings chirped softly, staying close to their parent as the light wrapped around them like a gentle cocoon. The dragon stretched its wings, still healing but stronger than before, and tucked them close again. The traveler watched, unable to move, overwhelmed by the beauty and strangeness of the moment. The hum grew clearer and softer at the same time, like a song coming from far away. The ground beneath the dragon shimmered, and the light rose upward, carrying the creature and its little ones slowly into the air. The traveler wanted to say something, to ask where they were going, to say they would never forget this, to wish them safety, but no sound came out. It felt like words wouldn't be enough for something like this. As the dragon floated higher, its tail wrapped gently around the hatchlings to keep them close. One hatchling turned its head and looked at the traveler. It blinked twice, the same way it did when it first came near the water the traveler had brought. The small gesture made the traveler smile without even realizing it. The light lifted them higher and higher until they were almost level with the canyon's upper edges. Then something surprising happened. A symbol softly glowing, circular, with 3 small dots inside, appeared on the canyon floor where the dragon had been lying. The mark pulsed gently, as if it were alive, then settled into the rock like it had always been there. The traveler took a slow step toward it, trying not to disturb anything. The mark didn't feel like something dangerous. Instead, it felt like a memory carved into stone, a quiet message left behind. Maybe it was the creature's way of saying thank you. Or maybe it was a promise that this place would always hold their story. When the traveler looked back up, the dragon and its young were rising into a shimmering field of light that had formed in the sky. It wasn't a ship in the way humans imagine ships. There were no metal parts, no engines, no sharp edges. It looked like a doorway made of moving light-soft, clean, and calm dot as the dragon entered the glowing space. Its body turned slightly translucent, like it was becoming part of the light itself. The hatchlings clung closer to it, chirping softly. Then, with one final pulse of brightness, the doorway closed and everything faded. The canyon grew silent. The hum disappeared. The air returned to normal dot. All that remained was the symbol on the ground and the memory of what had happened. The traveler stood there for a long time, unsure how to feel. Part of them felt sad that the creature was gone, but another part felt grateful to have witnessed something so rare and peaceful. It felt like a secret given to them alone. No one in the nearby town would ever believe such a story. If the traveler tried to explain it, people would laugh or assume it was some dream or imagination. So the traveler decided to keep it in their heart, not out of fear, but because some stories feel more real when held quietly. Days passed, then weeks, and the traveler went back to their usual life. But nothing felt exactly the same anymore. Sometimes, when walking near the canyon, they would stop at the spot where the symbol was carved. It still glowed faintly at night, like a soft reminder. The traveler often sat there for a while, thinking about how fear had turned into compassion, and how a creature that seemed dangerous had only wanted to protect its little family. The memory felt warm like a lesson carved into their soul. The traveler knew they had seen something most people would never witness. And even though the world around them kept moving, that moment in the canyon stayed alive inside them. Shining quietly like the glowing mark dot, it was a story too unreal for anyone to believe, but too meaningful to ever forget.